And on behalf of participants and other speakers, so a big thank you to Alex. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay. So fantastic sessions so far. We have a wonderful lectures, one after the other, coming up. So I would like to welcome Alex Goma. Alex, I hope you are already there. Oh, wonderful. Nice to see you, sir, again.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, nice to see you again.
Nice to see
thank you very much. Yeah. So I would like to invite Alex Goma. He is a very senior business leader from Nigeria. And of course, he served the whole Africa. So thank you, sir, for joining. So Alex Goma is a seasoned business leader for 20, 30 years of experience in FMCG experience across 6 African countries. He has led multiple functional teams, launched new brands, and driven strong growth in sales and profitability. So known for building high-performance organizations, he specialized in trade marketing, logistics, route-to-market strategies, and many more. His broad expertise spans general management, retail operations, and supply chain excellence. So welcome, Alex, for the Global Strategy, Global Supply Chain Summit. So the topic of today is the sales and operations planning and IBP, integrated business planning best practices. So I think we can hear from your practical experiences, how the organization run these processes, and then I'll learn a lot from you. So thank you, Alex, and over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Abdul, for the opportunity to share. I think I was listening to the previous speakers, and I was wondering whether there was a need for me to actually talk, because they've covered a number of the key things I'm going to talk about. But what I'm just going to try and do is share a couple of key principles that drive business planning and how you can make sure that that works for your organization. And then I have 1 or 2 examples from my past that I can share to say this is how it has helped us to drive business. I think basically what I'll try and cover is understanding what integrated business planning is. I want to focus more on that. We'll look at sales and operational planning, the core principles, best practices, and then what are some of the common challenges that are faced and how can businesses ensure that they avoid those. And then we'll look at some of the examples, like I said, from the past. But basically, what you're trying to do with integrated business planning is to combine everything you're trying to do into one single plan, where all the business functions are clearly aligned, right? One of the clear objectives is how do you ensure that you're working towards the same goals? How do you ensure that your strategy is aligned, right, with what you're executing in the market? And it allows you not to be reactive, but rather proactive, because you are looking ahead in terms of your assessment of the markets and the way you're going to respond as a business. So everybody involved in ensuring that that happens. But it's important to establish what's the key difference between S&OP and integrated business planning. I think S&OP basically is trying to ensure that you balance your supply and demand and to make sure that you can get the right operational efficiency and alignment. I think the scope that IBP brings is to integrate your financial and strategic plans and therefore connect strategy, operations, and finance holistically. So the entire business is connected from what you're trying to achieve as a business, and then how each of the functions beyond what is sales or marketing and operations helping you to fix that. Why should you look at this? I think it's because it helps you see clearly across your business functions what is adding value to the business and how you can improve your management decisions. I think it's very simplistic sometimes to think when you're not performing to say, oh, it's either a sales problem, it's either a supply chain problem. Sometimes the role of finance and some of the other sub-functions in ensuring that you can actually execute your plans and strategies Role of capability, role of people, role of external affairs is critical. So this allows you to see clearly the key outcomes you're trying to deliver as a business and how each of your major functions are working together. And you can therefore see the points of alignment and where there's a disconnect that is serving as a handbrake and stopping your business from running at full steam. It will drive improved collaboration because it allows for cooperation and very clear communication across functions. Scenario planning will help you identify and manage risk ahead of when they come. And it allows you to challenge all the assumptions. And again, it allows you to optimize how your resources are deployed, and therefore you can minimize waste. What are some of the core principles? I think the first thing is that you have to align your business strategy and operations. What exactly are we trying to drive? What exactly is the market asking for? What are the consumers asking for? Do we have the right strategy, and are we pulling up? In one of the businesses where I was, we had global brands, we had some local brands, and the focus of the business was just to push one of the global brands. And therefore, there was a lot of pressure to deliver without looking at what the needs of the market were and where the need states were, what the competitive landscape was. And we had to clearly show that unless we shifted from that strategy, whatever we executed was going to be faulty, because we were putting pressure on a brand that, yes, was growing and was big, but we were losing opportunities because we were not maximizing the role of our portfolio. So just switching and making sure that we rejig the strategy and then we can link it back to operations created a massive change for us within that particular business. Also, prioritizing the initiatives that we had just to ensure that we could focus on what was critical for us from a local and a global basis, allowed us to manage this. And then, of course, how we applied our resources, ensuring that we got everything we needed right within the marketplace, and therefore we could get the right kind of performance. The second thing was ensuring collaboration and accountability. So we helped everyone to realize that you needed to work together. And we were very clear about the points of intersections and where we needed to be working together as a team. And therefore, when the ball dropped, we knew where exactly to balance the accountability. Very clear, defined roles and responsibilities, critical, and then measuring across all levels. At a point, we had all the key parameters clearly stated out, and in every functional leader's office, we had very visible dashboards that allowed us to see how we were collaborating together and then the impact on the overall final results that we had. Again, it helps to drive continuous improvement and agility, and it is required, that kind of mindset, as a fact that we're not going to fix the problem in one go. So every day we aim to be better than what we were before. So you move away from looking at performance results and how you blame people to the point where you look at performance results and you start looking at how do we, right, ensure that we're getting the key lessons out of those, and then we are getting the results that we require from the people who are working through that particular parameter. And that way it became easier for us to track our performance and get people to focus on the point where we say we're not just about driving business performance or looking at who to blame, but it's about how we drive continuous improvement for the business. And by doing that kind of focus, it helped everyone to understand, okay, this is what the priority was for us and how everybody could drive that. And then you create a mindset of continuous review. So looking at your plans on a regular basis, how do you review? How do you change them to make sure that, okay, you can make the kind of changes that drive your improvement across the business? So that's something that was critical to make sure that we can drive that. Now, what are some of the best practices First thing is to have a very clear cycle, and this becomes the #1 priority for the business, where everyone knows that the one priority is their cycle of how we plan. So no other meeting takes priority over this. Clear milestones, the processes, consistent timelines, so everyone knows that this process is the singular most important process for the business. And then there's a very clear governance structure starting from the top and ensuring that the rules are very clear, and then you have accountability. Also important to leverage data analytics and technology. There are lots of businesses that have a lot of data, but they never use the data. And sometimes the data is kept in exclusion. You know, I in the past 4 or 5 months, I've been working with a large organization where one of the first things I did was to say, just give me your internal data. And I took the data and broke it down and then showed them where they had issues. And the issues were across functions. But the focus was always around the performance. Oh, our sales are up, our sales are down, without looking at where exactly is this happening. Now, there are lots of data points, but they're not integrated. So lots of businesses have data seated. The data is not presented in a manner that is visible for decision-making. And therefore, it's something that you've got to look at to say, how do we unify the data that we have? How do we bring it forward? Technology is important and is good. It helps to fast track. It helps to provide efficiency. However, my advice usually is fix the process and make sure you're doing the right thing before you invest in the technology. Because if you don't do this, you will invest in the technology. You will then start having a challenge from the senior business leaders who are not seeing the outcome of that investment in that technology, because the discipline of using or analyzing data, and then the technology now helps you to even make better, faster, more joined up decision making. Then people start to question whether this is valuable or not. Effective communication, I think it's got to be clear. And this is one of the areas where very clear dashboards for the entire organization, showing what are the most critical and important things. Again, one of the mistakes or errors I've seen is where different functions have these different dashboards. Are the dashboards linked together to the overall goals of the business? Big question mark. Are they measuring the right things, or are they measuring the things that show us whether we're good or bad? Or is it a tool that we use to point fingers at other functions within the business? I've also seen where businesses are paying for data from outside external data, and they're still debating whether or not the data is critical, or whether or not the data is working for them, whether or not the data is actually useful, whether or not they trust the quality of the data that they're getting. And that's something that it's a big challenge. You can be paying for data and you distrust the data, because I think that's something that affects the way or the kind of results that businesses get when you're looking at that particular structure, especially when you're looking at communication and data within the business. So it's important to do that. Also important to look at different scenarios. This is where finance comes to play, and this is where finance helps the process, right? Does finance act in a manner where they're challenging where the value exists in the organization? Are they challenging where the value is being eroded? Are they also expanding or challenging the thinking across the organization to ensure that we make the right decisions? Which is why it is important to have the right meetings and structures, and everyone is there. Whatever decisions are taken outside of the process are always brought back into the process to ensure that there's very clear visibility. And then also tracking and ensuring that the agreements that were made are handled in there, and then you're plotting and seeing the changes that you're doing on a regular basis. Again, so this helps you to see whether or not you're looking at the business in a proper manner. Now, what are some of the common challenges that I have seen, and how do you overcome them? First one is about silos. we typically start with the fact that every function has its own objectives. Every function thinks that it's the most critical or the most important, and every function is trying to deliver on its own objectives. Yeah, there are times when within the business, there might seem to be certain objectives that seem like they're conflicting. Simple example could be operations is looking at optimizing the structure in order to save cost, and HR is looking at the fact that, oh, we are looking at the climate of the organization, and one of the complaints is around attrition. So how do you find the balance? I think it's critical to ensure that the goals starting from the top are shared, the challenges and the risk involved are shared, and there's very clear ownership. And then we integrate the way the conversations happen and the way they're held. Again, the simple things like ensuring that you put businesses together in one particular, I mean, you put people not sitting by departments, for example, but sitting in a manner where it allows for them to have day-to-day collaboration will ensure that even when they're solving problems or working together in an integrated business planning process, then it starts to become a lot more open because people are willing. But this is something that you have to actively do, else you will take decisions and each function will go and decide this is what we're going to do. It's important that the executive lead and drive this. So I always say the CEO of the organization is the one responsible and accountable for an integrated business planning process that works. You have to own it. You have to drive the performance within the process and all the elements of the decision-making that happens. You have to champion, right, performance across the various steps or levels when you apply this process. You are the one that has to ensure that the right resources are allocated, and then you have to reinforce accountability for everything that happens here. This is not the problem of either a department in supply chain or a department in sales operations or a department in marketing operations or finance. This is the responsibility of the CEO and the exec team. You always face cultural change, especially where different functions have become like different kingdoms, and therefore they have their own ways of doing things, and you're now trying to change this. So one of the things you're going to face is cultural change and resistance. This is not the way we were doing it. This kind of measure doesn't tell us what is right for us. You guys don't understand how we operate in this department or this country or this particular area. So I think it's important to have the right training that will ensure people understand what you're trying to do. Start with a picture of what is possible. It's not just training to tick the box. It's to make sure people understand this is what will make our business stronger. This is what will make the business more robust. This is what will help the business deliver objectives. There must be very clear, tangible financial numbers attached to the change that you're trying to do in the process. And also you have to demonstrate to the people how this benefits them, both professionally and then how they are rewarded as a result of the business becoming better. There has to be very clear communication from the top, and where there are issues or clashes of prioritization, this has to be addressed head on. And it is not addressed by the guys at the bottom. It is addressed by the leadership. They have to be at the forefront of trying to ensure that this kind of change happens. And then, of course, in driving this change or managing the process, it is important to involve the stakeholders who are going to be affected by this when you're developing the programs, when you're developing the way you are going to drive this and get this to work across. Now, also important to measure success and create a culture of driving continuous improvement. I think we have to understand that just like running any business, if you focus on being better every day by day and you get everyone involved in the business to do that, then you start to find out that with little steps, you'll actually make a lot of progress. But you've got to be clear, what are you measuring? Are you measuring just the process, or are you focused on the outcomes? And then you also measure the underlying steps that ensure that you can actually see that your process is working for you. Okay? You've got to measure key things, financial incomes, right? Outcomes. What are the things that show that this process is working for us? That's the overall thing that we're trying to do. For that to happen, we have to measure certain things. Are we able to forecast accurately? Are we able to implement our activities? Are we able to manage the costs that we have within our process? And are we able to manage the way we execute our plans, agreed across functions? It's not just supply plans, it's sales plans, it's marketing plans, people plans, and then the technology plans that we have together, because each one of them, for us to have made those decisions, have an impact on the business. But overall, we're looking at the outcomes. This is why we're doing this. We want to grow our revenue. We want to grow our cash flow. We want to grow our profitability. We want to drive productivity across. And these are the main pillars. So we start from the major KPIs across the functions that add up to the financials, and then we start to break it down to the various tasks that affect people at their various levels. So it is important that we're not just tracking tasks. We are tracking outcomes. People have to shift from tracking tasks to tracking outcomes. And then we have to make sure that across the feedback process and the reviews of the business, we're constantly looking at where we have gaps and how we fix them. It is important not to turn any review process or feedback process to where it is a question of blame to point the issues at a particular function. A function may have the majority of the challenge. The focus should be, how do we as a business help them to overcome that? And where we have tried and we see that, okay, certain people are not living up to responsibilities, then we can as well take them out and knock them out of that. But the mindset we have to drive is that we own everything together. Where there are gaps, we work together to fix. Where individuals or functions are not showing that they want to accept the responsibility to fix, that's when we have to make sure that we try and get them out of the way and find people who can do this better for us. What are some examples that I've seen? I think in one of the businesses that I joined and ran, walked into the business, excess inventory, had over 39 different warehouses, had a lot of stock losses. Virtually every quarter, we're writing off losses as a result of that, because basically assumptions were not right. Functions were running at their own. Supply chain felt that, oh, all we have to do is make sure we have stock, because there was a long lead time for having stock, without looking at the impact on the numbers. Finance was not involved. Sales did not see it as part of their responsibility. But by sitting down and putting everyone together, we're able to look at the points where we'll actually need the inventory. We were able to shut down about 39 of those warehouses, closed down plants, built up capacity utilization in the other plants that we had. So without losing the fact that we could build the business, we ended up having profit growth because we saved from inventory, we saved from warehouse losses, and then we started to focus on serving the customer right. The second example was a large beverage company. Again, we were losing share in the market. We were internally focused. There was a supply-demand mismatch, sales blaming supply blaming sales, but we didn't also look at the fact that did we have the right capability in-house for us to plan? Did we have the right resources? Were we measuring the right things? So we started working on a joint business plan. And the first few months were tough because we were still losing and making the mistakes, but we just focused on measuring that we were doing the right things. And after 9 months, we started seeing the growth. And basically, to cut the long story short, in 3 years, we actually doubled the size of the business that we had. And we had everyone working together to the point where when we had initiatives, supply chain will join sales, sales will join supply chain, marketing will come, sit, work with supply chain. Even in periods where they were not supposed to be at work during festivities, you'll find the marketing team sitting, bringing refreshments for the supply chain, the logistics team, as they were working and trying to make sure that we get shipments out. So it started to become one plan rather than it becoming each of the functions trying to run their own things at the end of the day. So I think But it took a long while to break down silos. It took a long while. It took ownership from the top to decide that we were not going to blame functions. We were going to look at everything holistically. It took for us to decide that we were going to commit resources, and then we needed to demonstrate, even when we were struggling in the first few months, that we were looking at everything with a mindset to grow. We had the dashboard in everybody's office, and it was embarrassing to see a sea of reds initially. But as things started to turn around, as we started to see a number of ambers and greens, we started to see the results reflected in the marketplace. And basically, we doubled our share, like I said, in 3 years. So these are clear examples that you can actually run this and you can actually make a difference, but it has to be driven from the top. This is not something that is done by one sub-function. It has to be the executive team deciding that this is the way we're going to run our business. So just to conclude, for you to drive integrated business planning and to get everything to work, what you're trying to do is you're trying to integrate your strategy with your operational planning and make sure that there's very clear cohesion in your decision-making and how you execute. There are best practices that have been proven, lots of examples from different parts of the world. I think you've got to look at where you are as a business and decide to take yourself on a growth of where your foundation to a place where you become mature. There will be a lot of challenges. People will push back. People are used to working in silos. People are used to measuring things that do not matter the most. So you will find a lot of pushbacks, but you've got to be ready that this has to happen. Understand that this will take time, right? It is not something that you plug and play, and in 2 or 3 months, you start to see the results. And then you've got to measure your success and progress, but you've got to ensure you're measuring the right outcomes, starting from the financial metrics. What are the things that show we're successful? And then looking at all the functional areas. What are the things that are the most critical to deliver those financial results, and how are they joined up? And looking at the points of intersections, measuring and ensuring that we're able to drive it. And then holding everyone to account. When we see things that are tough, how do we get everyone to work together? Strategy is about choices. You have to be ready to make the right choices and ensure that everyone is tied together in making those choices count for the organization. If you're able to do this, then you will be amazed at the way your planning ensures that you can lead to consistent delivery of results. So thank you for your attention. If there are any questions or comments, I am ready to take them now.
Fantastic points, Alex. Now, it's very important process, S&OP and IBP, whether you call whatever name. It's very important part of strategy execution. Okay, so one of the challenge, especially this part of the world, is it's a monthly cycle. So you have taken some decision in executive S&OP or executive IBP meetings. Then these decisions and actions need to be done properly for the rest of the next cycle. If you don't do that, then the whole process will break down. So in your experience, how you are managing that? Okay, so you take decisions and you come up with some actions. So how you are doing that? So who will make sure these actions are taken place? Okay, because this is a monthly cycle. So on a week-on-week basis, if you don't take up the actions, then these same actions will be in an open position in the next month. So how do you do doing that?
So in the final meeting, which we call, in fact, in my last 2 organizations, we call them the executive decision meeting, and it was deliberate because we wanted it to be seen as executive decisions. So we came out with a sort of clear actions, and we had trackers. So basically, the actions are very clear with the timelines, and then we give people there's a responsibility to make sure that they are tracked. And then these actions are assigned to people at the various levels or the various steps. Typically, when you look at that kind of planning process, you will probably have a commercial review process as part of that. You will have supply process as part of that. You have a business optimization where you look at the linkage between your commercial supply plan and the impact of the rest of the business. So you assign clearly to every step of the process. And at the start of every meeting, there's always a review of where we are versus all the actions, and are we making progress. And I think at some point, and I think this is where I think we actually sought help from Fruitsy in the past, where we had some tools trying to use technology to make sure that those things were visible. So we started by using Excel, and then we decided to deploy a tool where we could see what are the most critical, and those things were feasible. We also linked them. Those actions were also linked to people's performance. So you don't separate performance from integrated planning. You're not running two different things. This is part of the overall organization performance planning process. So everything that we do starts from the 5-year plan, which breaks down to 3-year, and then you have your 2-year operational plan. And that's what goes into your performance planning objectives for the year. So that's the way we tracked and made sure that, okay, people adhered to this.
There are some key deliverables in IBP process. So one is you balance demand and supply. Okay, so you make sure that your capacity and your demand are balanced. Okay, and then one of the key requirement is to have the new forecast approval for next 6 months to 1 year, whatever. The second thing is you include financial part also in the meeting. So you take the financial performance, and also you can evaluate some scenarios. Okay. Now, this has to be balanced in a way. If you focus more on finance, then your demand supply balance will go off. Okay. So the discipline of running IBP process in the organization is very critical. So as you rightly said, the CEO has to lead this whole process. It is not somebody else. Okay, so each one has its own importance. First, demand and supply, balance it properly, and then they make sure that the financial performance is meeting to the requirements, and then the whole alignment of the rest of the things. Okay, so how you are doing? Who was a custodian, like a process owner for this, apart from CEO? Of course, CEO is the champion. So who is that? So you prefer to give it to supply chain director, or you prefer to give it to the finance director? So in your experience, Alex?
So I've seen both, right? But I've seen in one organization, okay, it was actually commercial that was the owner of the process.
Commercial.
Right. In a different organization, it was finance, right? That was the custodian of the process, and in a different organization, it was supply chain director. Now, the thing for me, it's about the capacity or the experience of the person in understanding that process, because sometimes we can throw it to a function, and if the function doesn't understand that is different. But if you look at the step, the step before the executive decision is usually your business optimization, or pre-SOP, as will be called in some businesses. And that step is held by finance, but it's actually managed by the team underneath, who I'll call the executive team, because this is where you try to balance and say, okay, what exactly do we have? Now, in the process, one of the key things that is critical is always track your unconstrained demand. So you never lose sight of that. Whatever decisions you take in your demand forecast as an executive, have it there, but always give room for for the commercial team to put what is unconstrained, and also leave room for the supply chain to tell you this is what is realistic. So when you're balancing the financial impact, and there's certain long-term. But if you now try to force down the demand, for example, because you're trying to get a good number for forecast accuracy or whatever, you are going to miss it. So what I always say is the exec should set stretch. And in some instances in the past, I would say, this is our stretch objective. Let's measure the gap, even though this is what the demand or what is showing. Let's measure the gap. And what we can then do is put some tasks. Let's give ourselves a task to say, how do we close the gap? And so we may come up with a number of initiatives. Okay, this is an initiative. Okay, it gives us only 10%. Now it means we have 90%, but we keep it visible. So it is also forcing the team to think about what is possible. Because if you're trying to balance the number or just get the number, you lose sight of what is possible. We don't know everything. No matter what we think the assumptions are, we don't know everything. So we'll always keep, this is the executive task. This is what the unconstrained is. This is what the optimization says the number is. And we'll always track our performance against that. And over time, you will see which number is closer. So even in moderating your demand forecast or balancing your demand, you can actually say over history, we've seen that the optimization team is the one that is always closest to whatever we end up with. But leave room for what is stretch, but make sure you track those numbers and then you allow the visibility. Else what can happen is either you are demanding to a low-hanging fruit and therefore you lose sight of opportunities, or you're setting a forecast that is too high and therefore it's frustrating for the team because they never see what they're able to do.
Fantastic. Yeah, I totally agree with you. From the practitioner point of view, you rightly said, sir. So one important point I would like to raise, because of this AI and other technology enhancements. So in S&OP process, especially when you're doing demand and supply balance, okay. So what is the reason for increasing the sales or reducing the sales or decreasing sales, or what is the reason for capacity challenges? So explaining those reasons in a detailed, in a systematic way, it's very important, because the moment you assume that you have a S&OP process going on for a period of 12 months or whatever, and then you have a reasons explained, then these reasons and analysis and recommended actions are documented properly, then AI can do miracles. So it's not only about the numbers and then the variances, it can also get the insights. Then this artificial intelligence can play a key role in helping you to identify those, because now you get action analysis and recommended actions for a period of time from different product lines and from different business units. So then all the collective insights, AI can do a miracle here. So it could be one use case for artificial intelligence to optimize IBP and S&OP.
Yes, I think artificial intelligence would help, because I think it will help in pulling out the data and the time it takes for you to look at the trends or whatever. I think where artificial intelligence will not help is in the local, what is your market context and some of the things that might explain to you why something in particular. It can show you that, okay, this is what is happening. So I think you need a balance, which is why the technology makes it faster for you to be able to get what it is. It can pull out the trends, but where you need the human mind or the human thinking and intellect who knows this is the context within how this has happened or what is changed here that can bring that nuance. So machines are good, but I think if you have the human who is thinking and who is applying what you're finding out in the marketplace or in the business environment, I think that's what makes it better. So machines will help you bring out the insights faster, will help you, the data show you the trends quicker, but you have to bring your own context in to say, okay, this is why this context is different. There's something I learned from a former boss, and I think from one book I was reading. It says, facts without context is not always the truth.
So nice. Yeah. Okay. Sir, in IBP process, it's not only about the demand and supply balancing financial review. It's also about culture. Okay, you are building a team leadership, okay, as a team. Because without IBP or S&OP, your leadership are largely in silos, right? So you are breaking this. So it's an opportunity for the CEO to make sure that your leadership team is working as a team. Okay. So how does that culture improvement happens? And it depends on the region, by the way. Okay. So each region has its own challenges. So what do you think culture enhancement or improvement through IBP? So,
I think it's typically what I would ask people to look at is, first of all, if you look at the organization values, because in a lot of organizations, we write values and these values are on
paper.
websites, they're on flip charts, they're on PowerPoint presentations, but in reality, do we walk the talk? And I remember my first leadership position as one of my first, rather not first, as a sales director. And when we had issues, and even some of the issues with product supply, my team will say, oh, boss, you're not shouting too hard at supply chain. They're blaming us for not selling, and you are not, you're not helping fight back to say, why are they blaming you? And I said, no, this is not about blame, right? We're all one team. We're all working towards one objective. So yes, I know the challenges that they have, so we would have to focus and help them. But let's look internally. We have contributed as well because we have given the wrong forecasts, right? We have not told them this is what we can sell. And when they now have a gap in something, we now start shouting that, oh, wait a minute, we can sell more of this, we can sell more. I said, let's go back 3 months ago. What did we tell them we can sell? Now that we're doing more than we expect. So the first thing is from the leaders, it's for you to act and leave that. And I simply told them, I said, guys, if we continue like this, it's only going to be a matter of 18 to 24 months before it shifts the other way. Because if you say, oh, we can't sell because supply can't give us, and the business will take a decision, okay, let's increase capacity. In 24 months, you have the new plants, and then they will fill up everywhere, and they say, okay, now we have enough products you're not selling.
You know.
Then it becomes a vicious cycle that you're going up and down. So I think the leadership have to recognize that. I think in one of the businesses where we actually told ourselves that even when we're sitting in leadership meeting, we will never focus on blame. We'll focus on the issues. We'll bring it out. If we found a team member saying something that is contrary to what we had some cards. You just have to raise it up and tell the person, look, you have to shut up now, right? And then the person shut. And then when we went to meet, we actually met as a leadership team across functions. So the supply chain person will come with me to meet my team. I used to go to the factory every month and go around every part of the factory just to show them that, look, thank you for the supply for last month. We saw what you guys did and you guys have helped us. And then for my team, which was the commercial team, I picked each of the functional heads to be like a sponsor of each of my divisions. So they had someone they could speak to if they had issues. Now, when you have HRD as a sponsor, you have supply chain as a sponsor, you have finance team as a sponsor. By the time they came back to the leadership team and they had to participate in the regional team meetings for those guys, they started to speak not only from a supply chain perspective or from HR perspective, they spoke as a member of that function. We started to see things differently. So these were simple examples that we used to break down some of those silos.
Fantastic. Great insights. So thank you, Alex. Thank you very much. Would you like to give any key takeaways for the participants across all the channels, especially the mid-size organizations or maybe startups or larger organizations who want to adopt the S&OP IBP practices? Key insights from your top 3 key insights. Yeah.
I think the first thing is in terms of expectation, what I say is go slow to go fast. So make sure that in implementing, during the period of implementation, you will think that things are not working initially because you're trying to establish that it's okay. Just make sure that you're measuring the right things that are happening, and then you will start to see the impact start to show. The second thing is that whatever process you have and whatever technology you have, if you don't have the right people, right, you are not going to get it right. So make sure that the people who are driving and leading these problems are people who are strong in leadership, communication, thinking, and problem solving. And you know what? They're not afraid to raise their hands to say, we don't know this, we didn't get this right, and we put this right. So I think if you do that, you will see that. I think the third thing is always you have to own it. You have to lead by example. You can't
Mm.
do it otherwise. So
Mhm.
you have to be the champion of this. If you focus on these three things, I think you will be surprised. You'll see your results within 6 to 9 months. That's for sure.
Fantastic, sir. Fantastic. So I truly appreciate your insights. It's really very practical. And hearing somebody like you, Alex, with so much experience in this region, in the domain, so it's always enjoyable. Okay. So thank you for joining the session and giving a wonderful lecture, Alex. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, please post to Mr. Alex. So we will be happy to clarify those clarify those questions offline, and make sure that your questions get answered. So thank you, sir. Thank you very much for joining the
All
session.
right. Thank you, Abdul.
So
My
have a
pleasure.
great time. Thank you.
Thank
It's
you,
a
everyone.
wonderful.
All right then.